Hello guys, welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to be talking about Nate Diaz versus Leon Edwards, a big fight, especially for the British scene, with Leon training out of Renegade in Birmingham. This is the first non-title co-main event that is a 5-round fight, so it's somewhat making history here. UFC 262 happening on May the 15th, so a little bit of time left, but we're going to go through and break down the techniques and give a little technical analysis essentially. Okay, so when breaking down this fight, I came down to the conclusion that the person who will win this fight is of course the person who sets the pace of the fight. And in Nate's case, he wants to set more of a continuous pattern, more similar to his triathlon physique, where he wants to keep the pressure at a high intensity but nothing too explosive, just like a continuous kind of pace. Whereas Leon wants it to be more of a what I'd call point style base, where you hit, move, and it's more to do with who can react faster and move faster, as well as setting traps for his opponent. So we'll begin with Nate and how he's going to be able to conduct this continuous pace. So one method is going to be through interruption. So Nate is very good at interrupting other people's patterns. You see him do a lot with the jab, and he does this usually when you start loading up. So when you look to load up for a strike, as you saw with Conor and Nate in the first fight, when Conor looked to load with that uppercut, Nate will throw his jab on this beat. So you'll throw the jab in between your strike, and it's a great way of basically stopping you in your tracks. And it's a nice relaxed long jab where Nate really extends his shoulder through and gets a distance on this. As well as this, Nate does do a lot of slaps, and he will do a slap into a cross. And with the slaps, sometimes he'll throw a slap to your head of course, and then this will guide you into the cross. And other times he'll actually throw the slap kind of wide so that you end up slipping into the cross. So he's kind of guiding your head into the cross once again with that slap. And the good thing about the slap is that he can kind of use it as a way of gauging the distance, and it's not so much of a strike, so it's a different kind of pattern that the opponent has to get used to. So imagine if you were playing chess and you were a chess master. If you go against someone who isn't very good, you might actually be like, oh, I don't really recognize these patterns, it's unusual the way this person's playing. This is the same for fighting. So in fighting, if somebody throws a different kind of strike, like a slap, it can be quite off-putting, and therefore he can slur this straight into the cross. Talking about slurring your punches, Nate does this with the jab cross of course, and basically the punches don't come on full beats, they come on half beats. If you've watched many of my videos, I talk about half beats a lot, where it's kind of like if it was music, it'd be a quaver beat versus a crotchet beat. So it's half beats instead of full beats, and this means that it's harder to judge when the cross is going to come because it's coming so quickly, and the jab cross is therefore slurred, similar to how the slap cross is slurred. When Nate does slur his punches though, he can throw it going forwards as well as going backwards. So this is one underrated aspect about Nate, is he throws his jab cross both coming forwards, and if you come into him, he's very good at leaning back and throwing the cross as well, catching you as you come in. You saw this done when he fought Gray Maynard in the second fight, or maybe third fight if you include the Ultimate Fighter one. But he basically caught Gray coming forwards by throwing a cross going backwards. He did this a little bit against Conor, and he also obviously does the forward one where he caught many people including Jim Miller, a lot against Donald Cerrone, both forwards and backwards, but it's a common move that Nate uses. If Nate does decide to come forwards with the slur jab cross or slur slap cross, he will often lean back afterwards and throw a slap after. And this was especially used against Conor in both the fights, where he would lean away and throw a long slap. So even if he does get caught, he's got something there at the end of it to catch you with. Another interruption tactic that Nate uses is he starts throwing a lot of lead kicks, and this is often because his lead leg is vulnerable to getting kicked a lot. He is quite heavy on that front leg, but as a result he will change his tactics up. He will throw a lot of front kicks, maybe even side kicks. He might even turn quite side on for those side kicks, and he will lift that leg up to try to check your kicks. And he did this successfully in the second fight of the Conor rematch, where he checked it early on, and Conor actually ended up suffering for the rest of the fight as a result of that check. So it's not like Nate doesn't check his kicks at all. He does, it's just like a vulnerability of his. But when he does start lifting up his leg for those kicks, he's changing his style of fighting. So whether that style of fighting is actually effective at getting any offense off, it does have to cause the opponent to adapt to his new style, which almost looks taekwondo-like, kung fu kind of stuff, as he says, or probably more profanity than that. And then he'll go back to his original style, and this can kind of throw his opponent off. And of course, on top of this, all the taunting does make a difference. The pointing at the person's face, the asking and putting the hands up like he's not hurt, all the little talk in between really does get into his opponent's head, and it's a way of kind of battling the other person's ego, trying to get them to get involved in a fist fight, a stand toe-to-toe kind of fight, and actually come out of the shell that they're meant to be fighting, go away from the tactics that they might be utilizing. And when he does taunt, he tends to actually throw his punches when you look to return that conversation. He did this very well against Michael Johnson. You talk to him, Michael would kind of get involved in it a little bit too much, and he would hit him on those moments. So he's not necessarily do this thing on purpose, but when he sees you giving him an opening, he takes it. So when Nate Diaz fought Anderson Silva, Nick was very confused why Anderson didn't take advantage of him when he was taunting him. And this just shows the mentality of the Diaz brothers. They fight and they will take advantage of a situation. If you're gonna basically chat back, you're giving yourself a moment where you're vulnerable, and they utilize this to catch you in those mid exchanges of conversation. And I hope you enjoyed these taunting between Brendan and I here. Didn't really know how to demonstrate this. Okay, so another way of keeping this fight at continuous pace as Nate wants it is of course by putting on the volume. This makes perfect sense, and as Nate starts to interrupt you with his jabs and his slur jab crosses, he does start to bring this together, adding several strikes in there, maybe several slaps in a row, and it's just touching, and basically not giving you enough time to block everything, and it means that you're always one step behind, looking to counter, but ultimately getting caught whilst you're looking for this counter. One thing that is particularly notable with Nate's accumulation and volume of strikes is when he's in the clinch and when he's kind of got you against the cage. This is where he does his best work, his dirty boxing on the inside, but also his knees. His knees are very underappreciated, probably because he's known more for being a boxer. But when Nate gets into the clinch, he has his underhook one side, he's got his head positioning under your chin, pushing you back, and he often will grab your other wrist, so you can grab and throw his knees in there without worrying about the opponent being able to grab his leg for a takedown. As well as this, he mixes it up into punches, so you can hook with the punches as well. So he's mixing it between grabbing the wrist, going for the knees, then throwing in the punches as well. Against Anthony Pettis, he did a great job of landing those knees, even to the head at one point, really stunning Pettis with the knees. Against Conor, he used the knees very effectively, and these kind of annoying hooks where he's pinned your head against the cage with his head positioning under your chin, as well as the underhook on the other side, making it very hard to move anywhere, and basically just tagging you in a controlled position. On top of the knees to the body and the head, he does throw knees to the leg a lot, and if you've ever felt a knee to the leg, it can really numb your leg, and it means that you might not be able to utilize it as well. You can start attacking the sciatic nerve along the leg, and it kind of shuts down your movement when you come out into range, which is perfect for Nate because that means you can put on the volume a lot more. So it's one way he breaks down your body and he breaks down your legs. It's not necessarily through his leg kicks, but the knees and the clinch onto the leg. And then finally, when he chucks on the volume from the break, it's very important the way that Nate kind of keeps his head positioning, he keeps leaning in, and he controls the break. So when he's breaking away, he's the one in charge of that disengagement. If he can be in charge of this disengagement from the clinch, he will often dig to the body and then move up to the head afterwards. So you get your hands to drop a little bit so you can get to the head targets. So it's opposite to what most people do. He actually goes body, then to the head, and therefore he can kind of mix it up. Once he's got you dropping your hands, he can mix it up from head to body, little uppercuts here and there, but basically just flowing through it. So he's not got any tension, he's not holding himself back at all, he's just letting his hands fly, and then the minute he feels like he's going to take a break himself, he'll just re-engage in the clinch and go back to that wrist control, the underhook, and the knees to the leg, body, as well as the accumulating strikes from the clinch with his punches. Okay, so to go on to some weaknesses and areas that might be vulnerable in this fight against Leon is, of course, they're both southpaw fighters, and that lead leg is always been a problem for Nate. Of course, I talked about his ability to lift up his front leg and kick and check possibly with it, but Leon is a very good kicker, and I feel like it's definitely going to be a place where he's going to be looking to target. And I feel like calf kicks as well make a big difference recently. Calf kicks haven't really been a big thing throughout Nate's career, but now they've been utilised a lot more. I feel like this would be a good opportunity for Leon to attack that leg, especially with it being heavy. Another thing that Nate tends to do is he brings his guard quite high up, and this leaves body shots vulnerable. You saw Masvidal really take advantage of this with his right body kick, and you also saw Conor land some good shots to the body. And this is just because as Nate covers sometimes, his elbows go quite high up and he ends up leaving a vulnerability here. And with Leon with such a really sharp left body kick, you could probably utilise this and start tagging him to the body to then maybe open up areas up top or finish the fight from there. From the clinch, he sometimes can eat elbows on the break. This is because Nate prioritises head positioning, and this can sometimes lead him to having not much of a defense from the clinch position. Once again, Masvidal used this in the clinch where he got off elbows, but we know Leon is very, very good at elbows, and on the disengagements from the clinch, this could be an area which could be exploited by Leon, is getting to catch Nate with the elbows on the breaks especially. And last but not least, Nate tends to lean away quite well and step and stuff, but when it comes to ducking his head forwards after his jab cross, which is a really long punch, so it actually means that his opponent's slightly further away, but if he gets this slightly off and he ducks his head too low, this could lead him into a knee or some sort of counter shot from here. So just watch out for the possibility that Nate ducks a bit low, and once again, if he ducks low, that leg is heavy for the leg kick. Okay, so on to Leon Edwards, and let's just repeat the fact that he wants to have a point style base pace. So basically he wants to be looking to control it by touching, moving, a bit more like a karate or Machida like fight. Leon is very, very effective at controlling rhythm and pace in his fights. In fact, in his win streak, he has shown the ability to basically create a pace that his opponent has to follow because of several reasons, which we'll just go over now. So the first thing let's talk about is striking control, and how he controls the striking is through feints and counters. So with the feints, of course, this kind of gives his opponent something to think about because they have to be looking for the strikes that he might throw. He does a lot of twitches with his left side because he predominantly throws the strikes from his left side, which is of course useful as a southpaw fighter. He will twitch his shoulder, he will twitch his hip, he even just do a twist. There's a lot of little mini feints he's doing. Against Bilal, you saw even more feints than usual, showing that he's added more ripples to his game. And I don't feel like that fight went on long enough to see everything that he's improved upon. And with the feints, it's hard to tell what's going to come. So Leon plays a really good game of it could be a left hand, it could be a left front kick, it could be a left body kick, it could be a left high kick, left low kick, it could be a oblique kick. And it really throws off his opponents because they're not sure what strike's going to come because there's several possibilities. So it's similar to Israel Adesanya, where he gives his opponents several possibilities of what he could throw, and then it kind of plays this game of seeing what the target, what their response is, and then throwing the strike that's most effective. With Leon's kicks especially, he is very good at controlling them. His left kick can be delayed, so you can change the timing on it. So sometimes it can just be a straight blast, fast kick. Sometimes it can have a little bit of a delay, so he pauses it a little bit, changing the timing of the person's block. And possibly, therefore, if they block a certain area, Leon can change the height of the kick. Against Bilal recently, he did a duck into a head kick. The little detail was before he did this, they were kind of shifting off one way and then a shift another way, and this allowed Leon to track Bilal's movement, and as he was gonna go back towards Leon's left kick, he decided to duck, freeze Bilal a little bit with the feint, and of course throw it up high because the duck was indicating he would go low. And with Leon's punches, he tends to actually lead with his cross sometimes, and this is because there's another feint going on, and that's the arm swinging around at the front. So he likes to swing his arm out, and this kind of messes around with the timing. So if this arm is moving quite slowly and relaxed and doing different things, then it changes the timing of his really fast cross. It makes the opponent feel like this is a slow movement that he's gonna go, or the pace of the way he fights and moves is different to what it actually is. So it's almost a bit of an illusion that he's thrown. And whenever you do circular actions, your eyes are automatically drawn to that action. So it's actually a bit of a psychological thing that Leon's doing by waving his hand in a circular motion. And when he leads with his cross, it sometimes can come out like a bit of a jab. So that means the timing is more like a pop shot. And of course, sometimes it could be a really solid shot with this left hand as well. The counters, of course, come a lot from his left hand, and he does a lot of pull away counters, and it really depends on how his opponent moves. So if his opponent is ducking a lot, he can throw the uppercut as a counter, although his favourite counter usually is the cross. So he'll pull away, throw the cross in, and he can also pull away and throw the hook, so maybe their guard is more front and centre, and that means he can get around with the hook. But Leon's got great control over his left hand, and he kind of has the ability to adjust the punch midway, so he can see where the target is and then maybe change it from a cross to a hook, or maybe to an uppercut. Of course, Leon has that counter against Seth Brzezinski, where he got a really quick knockout, and that's basically when Seth looked to kick his leg, he just timed the kick and threw the cross straight down the middle. So that's something to watch out for, is the timing of Leon, if he can time that cross straight down. So if Nate does decide to go with more kicks, he's going to be careful when he throws it, because of course when you're on one leg, you don't have the ability to move away as quickly, and therefore it's a great moment to come in with the cross if you know that the kick is coming. When Leon has you a bit more hurt, he tends to come in with the jab crosses and the jab hooks, but his counter is almost, he leans and slips at the same time as he throws these strikes. So I'm counting this as a counter because he's being offensive, but he's also being defensive minded. So he's moving his head off center line so that he's not in as much danger, and then throwing his shot over the top. So it could be either a straight cross or a hook. He often will step his foot to the outside of his opponent if they're an orthodox, but if they're southpaw, even so, he's kind of creating a bit of an angle for himself to be out of the way of the straight counters and then throw a shot around and over. Another counter you saw against Gunnar Nelson was he would slip the cross which Gunnar threw, and then he went straight into a clinch scenario where he pivoted and pulled Gunnar towards his elbow. So he pulled Gunnar through and then he smashed in the elbow. And the very good thing, as Dan Hardy mentions in the commentary, is the pivoting as he does this. So he pivots and pulls, meaning that's not just an arm motion but his whole body pulling him through, and then throws the elbow over the top. And it was quite cool the way that Leon did this, because of course it's kind of a transition through to the grappling realms where he slipped and also kind of parried the shot, and as Gunnar kind of smashed into him into that clinch range, he controlled it, got a single tie plum, pulled him around straight into the elbow, and the pull around to pivot kind of actually moved Gunnar into dead space for that strike to land. And another similar tactic that Leon does to counter the straight right or to step off of the straight shots is he slips off and he goes for the double unders and straight into a trip. You saw this in the first round of his fight with Rafael dos Anjos, where he slipped the punch, got the double unders and went for the takedown. And this is quite a very underrated part of Leon's game, is his grappling. He's a very, very good grappler, probably equally good on the ground as he is standing up, and he has very good ability of mixing up the different arts, and this is one way he parries and counters the strikes and transitions straight into the grappling and gets almost like an effortless takedown as a result due to timing and just clean technique. Another way that Leon controls the pace is in the clinch. So although this isn't really point style fighting anymore, but even in the clinch it seems like he controls and slows down the rhythm a little bit. So he gets good control points, and one is he frames on the hip. So he's got, the other person might have the underhook and he kind of frames over the top and against the hip to keep their hips away so they can't get their hips underneath, or basically get their center of gravity underneath his to get a takedown. And then he will work the knees in from there. So he will also get head position, which kind of stops and frames them off. The single tie plum is also another frame. So he's using a lot of frames to keep you away. You've got the hip frame, you've got the tie plum, you've got the head positioning. And it'll be interesting between Nate and Leon who can win the head position battle, because they're both very good at this area. But by getting all these control points, it allows him to throw in safe knees, and also it changes it from a high pace maybe clinch scenario to more of a slow pace where there's more control on Leon's side. As well as just knees from this position, Leon will mix in sweeps, and the sweeps change straight into the knees because maybe you sweep them over and then move into the knee. And of course he's got that elbow over the top when he wants to disengage at all times. So he gets you worried about the knees and sweeps, and then when you kind of forget about the elbows, he throws them in there. And on the Joe Rogan episode he was talking a lot about how he's been working on his elbows. So it'd be interesting to see in this fight, I think will inevitably be in the clinch at some point, how these elbows will come into play, because before they were very, very good anyways, very, very effective. I wonder what new ripples he's added in recently, because we didn't really get to see that in the Bilal fight. Another interesting one that Leon uses is the knockover. So from the clinch there's a wrestling move where you knock the arm over and you usually go around and take the back. And of course this is an option for Leon if you wanted to take the back, but he also uses it to break out the clinch. So he'll knock the person's arm or over, so the arm which is either on the tie plum clinch or is an overhook and he's got an underhook underneath. He can knock it over and he can turn them straight into the left punch. And whether he knocks the person over, either way, he's created a situation and angle for his own strikes. And you can see here an example of possibly throwing a head kick from there. And I think this could be an example of a good move to throw against Nate, because Nate's quite long. And if you can knock him over and throw the head kick, then he could get the finish from here, because of course Nate's only, I think, apart from the Masvidal fight where it got stopped because of the cut, but against Josh Thompson he was finished by strikes, and I think that's the only time he's actually been finished properly. So the head kick is of course a great weapon for Leon to use, especially if you can get Nate to duck into it from a distance. A detail on the knockover is you want to turn your shoulders and twist away, so you're kind of twisting away from your opponent, and it's a bit of like a strike with the knockover, so you're kind of knocking them into it, as well as it being a wrestling and grappling move, which, as I said, usually gets used to get either the back or maybe shoot under for double leg, but in this case it's been used to transition into the striking. As far as areas of vulnerability against Nate for Leon, I feel like if Nate can get into a rhythm and pace and put pressure on, then Leon prefers to fight where, once again, he's kind of fighting more. He throws a couple strikes and then moves. He wants to avoid the damage. So if Nate can accumulate the strikes up, then it could possibly be a problem for Leon. So in the between phases where Leon moves around and cuts the angles, there could be a little point where Nate can take advantage of the breaks in between. Another thing that I noticed in the Donald fight is sometimes Leon would lift up for shoulder guard, and this will allow Donald to throw several punches off in a row. Not that they necessarily landed cleanly, but with someone like Nate, they're going to like this, and then they'll probably get off maybe a couple strikes. So this could be another area that could be exploited by Nate with his style of pressure and volume. And finally, Leon tends to prefer throwing things off his left side. Even when he changed stances against Bilal, it was mostly left hands with the jab hand, and therefore if it's mostly left side, Nate might be able to predict more where the punch or strike is going to come from and lean away from it the other side. So it could be a cool thing if Leon throws more right side kicks, because Nate might not be expecting it, and of course Nate, being a southpaw, is facing towards the right hand side more, his body is facing that direction, so it's almost more effective to throw the right kick than the left kick against Nate, who's a southpaw who turns that direction. In saying this though, he has fought the likes of Rafael dos Anjos, who of course are southpaw fighters. So that's all from me. I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope this broke it down well. Let me know your feedback, and if you want any other particular kind of videos, please leave a comment below. Otherwise, remember to like and subscribe, really appreciate it. If you could share my videos, once again, really appreciate it, and I will see you next time for another video. Cool, have a great day.